Hello, it's near the end of May in 2023, and it's time for another episode of I Need to Talk. Today's topic is how the press handles EV news and how they influence EV news. There have been a lot of articles in recent months that are kind of like a backlash, it seems, against the rapid EV adoption. And it's kind of expected because we had a real big hype in 2022 about EVs. EVs are coming. Everybody's going to get an EV. Get your EV tax credit. Big news all the time. EVs, 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 EVs. And inevitably, when there's a big hype like that and things settle down, especially if they don't continue to roll at the rate that is expected, there's a backlash. And I think we're getting a bit of that. Um, Availability of EVs is still very challenging, um, and prices are really high. And there's EV charging issues with when you travel out of your home area, going on a long trip. The EVs are more and more prevalent, but there are not a whole lot of more charging options on highways. So, yeah, I get it. But some articles, seem to have some really dumb premises. One in particular that caught my eye in the past week or so, and it was run with by several different automotive outlets, was that people are keeping their cars for longer and longer, and that spells bad news for EV adoption, was the headline. I will upfront admit I did not read the article um, because the premise of the headline is stupid. Let me tell you why. Yeah, I'm sure people are keeping their cars a lot longer. There's a lot of reasons for that, though. First of all, they cost a lot more than they used to, even 15 years ago. Um, and they last a lot longer than they used to because there have been market improvements in build quality of pretty much all the manufacturers. They've all seemed to have, we've reached a tipping point with manufacturing where pretty much everybody has the same quality, you know, bodybuilding lines and everything else, and paint protection is a lot better. You see a lot less rust through on vehicles in the last 10 or 15 years than you did in years prior. Um, and the cars cost a lot more as a result. Plus, in addition to the build qualities increasing and the cost of manufacturing going up as a result to get that benefit, to get that result, um, they are filled with doodads now too. All this advanced driver assistance systems and whatnot. So I think that's one reason people are keeping their cars longer is they are lasting longer. They go a lot longer without maintenance than they used to. Um, Maintenance is pretty straightforward, and so that's one reason. Another reason is because they spent so much money on it, it takes them a lot longer to pay it off, and that means they need to keep it longer just to get the monetary value out of the car. And I think it's not uncommon anymore for people to lease a car for 3 years and then at the end of the lease do the buyout, assuming that the car's resale value is at or higher than the buyout cost. And then that buyout needs to be rolled into a loan, which may be 5 years long. So then, poof, that's an 8 year. Basically, they took 8 years to pay off their car. So they're going to want to drive it for another 2 to 4 years after that, probably with no car payment, um, to get the value that they used to get out of the cars that they paid off in 4 or 5 years previously. So that's another reason that people are driving cars longer. But to the premise of the headline, which is that people keeping their cars longer is going to slow down EV adoption, I think it's kind of the opposite. I think one of the major recent drivers of people keeping their cars longer is they're waiting for an EV that is affordable and of the style and size that they want. And there's just, so few options. Um, and, I think a lot of people look at that Chevy Bolt and they go, it's just too small and it's too old tech. And they're right about both of those things. And then they look at the ID4 and they're like, well, maybe that's the right size and specs, but the range isn't all that super and it's kind of expensive. And they're right, but it's I think the ID4 right now is probably the closest thing to a commonly recommendable EV that's available that you could actually buy. So I really think that headline's got it backwards, that the people keeping their cars longer is not a sign of the EV transition being in trouble. It's a sign that people are waiting for EVs to buy. And they're just going to hold on to their ICE car. They're not going to buy a new ICE car because they think EVs are the future. So I think that's actually very positive news for EV adoption. All we have to do is get some dang cars available. Now I can go off on a whole other topic on that, like GM. Just briefly mention this. Here it is again. We're in the end of May, coming up on June, and we ain't seen any Blazer EVs. We haven't seen any Equinox EVs. Nothing. All we're getting is a trickle of lyrics coming out at dealerships, and still in late May 2023, the Lyric has been available supposedly for over 2 years. Nobody in the automotive press has done a proper test. They've all done first looks from the GM controlled press junkets 2 years ago. That's all they've done. And what did GM do again this week? They announced yet another giant, low volume, high cost EV. They're going to make a Cadillac Escalade. So, it's another Hummer variant, right? It's going to have the 200 kilowatt hour battery pack from the Hummer, be made in small volumes, be sold for $150,000. What GM, and I love this. Seth, I think it was Seth Weintraub at electrek.co, pointed out at the end of his article about this press release that to date GM has put out more press releases about Ultium than they have Ultium vehicles. And I think that says it all. That is, I don't need to say anything else. That nails it. Okay, so it's been a beautiful drive and a beautiful afternoon, and hope I didn't ruin it with my ranting. Feels good to get that off my chest, which is why I do these.